Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Samuel Ndebele. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today, we will discuss how the Gym Group kicked rolling forecast into shape with Anaplan. As I said, my name is Samuel. I'm a senior architect in the customer success team at Bedford Consulting, and I've been Anaplanning for just over 3 years with a background in FBNA. I've been involved in over 40 use cases across over 25 projects. And of course, I'm a certified Anaplanner. I'm joined today by Matt Cannon from the Gym Group. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for being here. Please, Matt, tell us about yourself and your background.
Absolutely. So I joined the Gym Group back in 2016. Originally, I trained as a chartered accountant with PwC. I qualified back in 2013. Having left PwC, what I wanted to do next was effectively find somewhere where I could combine some of my passions with what I'm good at. So I'd worked briefly in the fast growth consulting team at PwC. I had a real passion for health and fitness, and what I wanted to do was find an exciting company. I found that with the Gym Group. I took that opportunity, combined my passion for health and fitness with a real fast growth company that would, really give me the opportunity to do what I enjoyed. And I had a great time at the Gym Group. I joined when we had 80 gyms. Fast forward 2.5 years, we now have 160.
Wow.
So you can imagine the growth that comes with that. You've got lots and lots of challenge, but I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been an absolutely fantastic couple of years.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about life before Anaplan at the Gym Group. What was life like prior to Anaplan? Was there a legacy system, or did you just use Excel?
Like a lot of companies that then turned to Anaplan, it was death by spreadsheets. We had an old spreadsheet model that we used for our forecasting. That spreadsheet was built when we had about 10 gyms. Don't get me wrong, it was a great spreadsheet, but we'd almost outgrown it. We obviously, at the point I joined, we had 80 gyms. So what had just happened is lines after lines have been added to the same model, but we hadn't just added gyms, we'd added complexity to the business. The business wasn't what it was when it was 10 sites. Right. It's grown that quickly. We'd had changes to the product. Internally, we'd had changes to our data structures. And what had happened is the old model hadn't really been kind of updated. It had just been, all the data had been shoehorned in to fit with the existing system. And so the way the budgeting and forecasting process works is that to try and make sure we were doing everything at as granular level as possible, we had lots of different spreadsheets outside of the model. But then what you had to do is link them all to the main model to effectively consolidate the numbers. So effectively, you lost any of the granularity that you had by rolling it up into fitting it into an existing data structure.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. A painful environment, but one, of course, that was caused by the growth of Anaplan so quickly and Excel's inability to scale with that growth.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see it's a great opportunity at which Anaplan could solve. It's that, there will be many companies like this where, our growth, we had grown massively. It had been fantastic, but really there was an opportunity now to actually try and connect some of that planning.
Absolutely. So in terms of use cases and selection process, firstly, how did you know that you needed an enterprise performance management solution like Anaplan and not just an amendment to the existing Excel models?
As I said, we've been through a real kind of growth trajectory. I mean, the Gym Group opened its first gym in 2008. So roll forward 10 years, 11 years, and we're now 160. So at the point in time that we decided to go down the route of Anaplan, it was quite clear to us that kind of growth wasn't stopping anywhere. I mean, 2.5 years ago, we were a fundamentally different business. We had 80 sites, we've now got 160. Yeah. It was quite clear that we were scaling up, and as we were doing so, we needed a tool that was fit for the future. Yeah. And really, that was what we were looking for in a software solution. Was we knew that yes, we could build an Excel model, but in 6 months' time, that Excel model will be out of date. We needed something that could grow with us and be flexible as we kind of grow, change our product, change our business.
Definitely. And it's a big change going from something like Excel that everybody knows and trusts, no matter how much it may be creaking at the time. It's a big change. And within that change, what made you choose Anaplan? Why was that the solution that you wanted in terms of an EPM tool?
really the decision for Anaplan had kind of been made before, without needing to consider other tools, other solutions. Now I know there are other solutions out there, but really, because our financial controller Becky had a previous experience at one of her companies before, Reckitt Benester, where she had seen the power of Anaplan.
Right.
She knew Neil from Bedford Consulting, your CEO, and she knew that with the way the business was going at the gym group, with the way we modelled in Excel, it was kind of quite clear that Anaplan would be the solution for us. So to give you kind of an example of that, I guess one of our biggest challenges was revenue forecasting.
Right.
So we did revenue forecasting in a spreadsheet, but that spreadsheet was huge. We have many different subscription lines that a joiner to a gym could join on.
Yeah.
So someone could join our gym on £9.99, someone could have joined our gym on £19.99.
Okay.
Think about that multiplied by 80 gyms. You know, we're talking lines and lines of a spreadsheet, and actually it was only getting more complex. We're adding more gyms, we're adding more products. In Anaplan, you can quite clearly simplify that data structure.
Yeah.
That data structure can then be line items for those products, and then it can just apply to those 80 to 160 gyms.
Absolutely.
So in doing so, you've already simplified everything. You can see the rolled up impact of it on one screen, but if you wanted to dig into a gym, you can. And that is kind of the beauty of Anaplan. It was simplifying what we were doing, which in itself actually is simple. It was just the nature of the fact we were doing it for multi-site.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And I think one of the key things that people find with Anaplan in terms of its scalability is that just implementing the tool, because of how it's structured, you have to define hierarchies in a more organized way than you probably would have done in Excel when things were very isolated in terms of data sets. So as you said about those roll-ups, it lends itself to that scalability functionality in Anaplan so well, when all you've really done is define a few lists, build them in Anaplan, plot the rates on line items, and all of a sudden you're seeing it flow through so many structures, through so many dimensions.
What always amazes me about Anaplan is that don't get me wrong, there are times when you wouldn't want to just copy an Excel spreadsheet. But say you were looking at an Excel spreadsheet that you were quite comfortable with.
Yeah.
That spreadsheet you may just want to simplify that by putting it on Anaplan. Actually, you can quite quickly, say within 5 or 10 minutes, replicate that structure in a far more organized way, as you say, with a number of lists, with a number of different like cost centers, with line items.
Absolutely.
And within 5 minutes, you can replicate a spreadsheet that might have taken you, a couple of days to build because of the data behind it.
Yeah.
And actually simplify it in Anaplan. And seeing that is great. Now, I know that there are plenty of other scenarios where you can do stuff in Anaplan that you wouldn't even have dreamed of starting with in Excel. But one of the powers of Anaplan for me is when you do take something that somebody knows and simplify it for them in Anaplan.
Absolutely. Agreed. So for the implementation, we utilize an agile methodology best practice adaptation called the Anaplan way. So let me give a quick overview of our implementation approach before asking Matt a few questions. So we began in this case, as we always do, with scoping workshops, which utilized whiteboarding and flowcharts to define current and target environments. We defined key or high-level business processes, and these were ultimately what we migrated into Anaplan. So next, we defined requirements for implementing in Anaplan, and we constructed detailed deliverables or user stories, as we call them in the agile world. And we continually tested the functionality and reconciled the data to ensure reliability. Now, Matt being an ex-auditor, he was absolutely spot on with the reconciliation and was all over it. And this kept us exactly where we needed to be in terms of moving in the right direction at all times. For me, one of the key unique selling points about Anaplan is the empowerment it gives customers, such as the gym group, to build or enhance models for yourselves. And you were instantly hands-on, Matt, with Anaplan, having passed the training and acquiring certification before the project began. This growth and improvement in Anaplan in yourself continued throughout the implementation, with you taking core ownership of the models and how they function. This for me is the perfect environment for Anaplan because it enabled you to independently grow your model as the business grew. Our first key use case was the FBNA model. Tell us about how you found the implementation being your first introduction to Anaplan.
I think it's having spent the whole of my career prior to Anaplan on spreadsheets, which, don't get me wrong, I still have their use and I still love using, but I think the product, I kind of fell in love with what it could do for me in a way, in that it just took a challenge that I was having and simplified it.
Yeah.
Now, when you see that happen, knowing the pain you go through to make it. So I use the example of the revenue forecast.
Yeah.
Knowing the pain that I went through to produce a revenue forecast.
Yeah.
To see that pop up in Anaplan, to build that in Anaplan, and to run that in Anaplan, and to be able to answer a question that my CFO may ask me saying, member numbers are down, what does that mean for revenue? To be able to churn out that answer using Anaplan within an hour compared to being able a couple of days work, it's incredible. It really does give you back the time and give you that real appreciation for what you can do.
Absolutely.
So that means that time can be spent on what if analysis. That means that time can be spent in the places that you enjoy adding value as opposed to churning out the forecast.
This is it, the number crunching and data rec and so on. You can focus on the value add activities that you want to be doing at that time.
And I think the thing I loved about the implementation and really enjoyed about it was quite quickly how it took shape. So within a couple of sessions, a couple of days of us having sat down and started scoping, we were building, and we were almost making real progress. And actually, it's incredible how quickly you can grasp Anaplan. You were able to grasp our business, and the output that we had following that point was brilliant. I really enjoyed doing it in a way, in that you start to ask questions about your business because of the build. You see the opportunities to take it in places that you hadn't even scoped because of the power of Anaplan. And I think another example of that is that we were probably assuming when we initially scoped Anaplan that we'd just worry about membership numbers and their revenue forecast daily. Monthly. But given that the business is starting to look at them daily, and given the power of Anaplan, we were able to actually start taking that down to the day level because of what Anaplan can do. It can roll everything up, and when you want to look at the high level, you can. But if you needed to go into the granularity and the detail, you can do that too, and that was the real, again, power of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things there that I find in my experience is around the agile approach that we have. And that agile approach that we follow is largely because the more exposure that you have to Anaplan, the more you realize what you could do. So you'll find that what you wanted at the very beginning, as we did, as it grows and it progresses and you see it taking shape, as you've said, more and more in the system, you'll start to realize, actually, we can also do this and we can also do that. And bringing all of that in is part of the fun of it, and also the reason why we do follow that agile framework, which I think that we utilize fantastically in this project. So that was really good.
Yeah, I can picture a couple of times where we hadn't seen each other for a couple of days and we'd left with a clear plan of where we were going to take it in the next session. And to want a better phrase, I've got to be greedy in a way. I was like, I'm getting excited about what Anaplan could do for me. And you'd come in and you go, oh, we're starting on this, aren't we? And I'm like, actually, I've got an idea for you. And it would be another idea of how I could make my life easier, how I could make my team, give my team some time back to actually make things more efficient. And that is, again, the beauty of Anaplan and why you advocate the agile planning.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it was really enjoyable to, as you said, would have a few days apart. So we would design and build on, let's say, a Monday, and we'd meet on the Thursday, and the model has grown. It's now a different beast to what it was a few days ago. And the direction, although moving in the same way over the long term in terms of the implementation, there are now slight nuances where we're getting even more functionality and value add out of the system, which I thought was fantastic. And it shows that that's when it's really working well. And of course, the reason why it was such a success for you guys at the gym group.
And they were my favourite bits, the hour at the start of the day to do the show and tell of what I'd done, and then your hour at the end of the day to do the show and tell of what you'd done.
Absolutely. No, brilliant. The next use case was the membership profiling. How did the gym group use Anaplan for membership profiling?
So that one was really just to enable the FBNA model to really fire on all cylinders. So we wanted to be able to do trend analysis. We had in the FBNA model a lot of assumptions. Now, a lot of those assumptions would have been driven off prior historical data. So if you think about, we implemented Anaplan in 2017. So the FBNA model started in 2016 with the previous year of actuals. Again, as I said, we were opening lots of gyms, so we were making lots of assumptions on new gym openings. And in order to do that, we needed some historical information. So what we did was just create a membership database model that we could take back to 2008. And rather than take the whole FBNA model with it and therefore increase the size of the FBNA model massively, we created a membership database that went all the way back to 2008, which allowed us to start playing around with numbers and make some assumptions of what membership a gym could get to at maturity, which we generally see as 24 months. And actually, by using that historical information and that historical data set, we could, in the FBNA model, do some really good what-if analysis and do some scenario planning.
Brilliant, brilliant. And would you say that you knew at the beginning that you would want those two separate use cases in terms of the membership database and the FBNA model? Or would you say at that time it was just an FBNA goal that it would have these functionalities, but we didn't necessarily know that it would be two separate use cases?
The second one. So, and I think actually what probably came out was a couple of different, like you say, use cases, but ultimately we had one goal, and that was to get the FBNA process as efficient as possible. So yeah, the second one definitely, and again, agile.
This is it, that organic growth that comes out of the project simply from seeing the benefits of the pieces that we've already built is what led to that approach in terms of having those two use cases and the way that they fed together.
And I'd say a lot of that kind of rings true as to the real, again, benefits of Anaplan, because there was a number of things that has happened in our business that I didn't actually know about when we were scoping Anaplan. For example, we've acquired 18 sites off competitor Lifestyle Fitness in 2017. Obviously, I knew that was coming a couple of months prior to the acquisition, but when we started Anaplan, I didn't. Last year, we acquired 13 sites from Easy Gym. Again, when I scoped Anaplan, had no idea that was coming. We've changed our product line a couple of times. For example, we've now got a premium product. We've now got subscription nutrition water. And again, these things have happened in our business. And roll back to that spreadsheet that I was talking about, I just wouldn't have been able to cope with it. And Anaplan has just grown and grown and grown. And I don't know how we would have coped with integrating the acquisition into our forecast, all those things without Anaplan.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Fantastic. Now let's move on to the key takeaway from today, the benefits. How has Anaplan saved you time and improved efficiencies at the gym group?
The one for me is just being able to churn out the reforecast and have it at our fingertips. As I said, the CFO may ask me a question and say, member numbers are down, what does it mean for revenue? And actually, rather than spending my time doing that calculation in Excel, I can spend my time helping present a case of what we could do to maybe over deliver, or what we could do to get back to budget, actually I've taken the pain away from the process by implementing Anaplan. And that for me is the key bit, is that we've got plenty of talented people in our team. I'd much rather they were spending their time doing value add analysis and trying to help, the operations team work out what member numbers they need to get to kind of move the dial, as opposed to calculating what the reforecast. I'd almost, Anaplan allows us to kind of accept that as a given and actually move the business forward and support the business, because that's what you want from your finance team. You want your finance team to be kind of fantastic business partners, and actually Anaplan is a really great way of doing that.
Fantastic, indeed. And what about the benefits that you've realised in relation to having better access to data in Anaplan?
I think that one for me is, what I really like is to be able to do the kind of micro analysis at the kind of really granular level, and just in doing so, also seeing what it does to the big picture. So for me, in my role, when I was kind of running the FP&A team, I was always concerned with the group as a whole, but I might have a meeting with the regional manager in the north who might be really worried about the performance of Bolton.
Yeah.
Now, I'd have a chat with him. He might say, there's a competitor coming down the road in 3 months. I reckon we're going to lose 500 members to that competitor.
Yeah.
That's going to cause us a revenue challenge, and I'm really worried about the performance of Bolton. The flag in my head is, what does that do to the overall group number? So actually, we can solve both our problems. Absolutely. Because we're sitting there talking about Bolton. I'm playing around with Anaplan as to what's going to happen to revenue. And then whilst I'm talking to him about Bolton's performance, I can see what it's doing to the overall group number, which is my main concern.
Absolutely.
And actually how it can quickly slip between micro and macro and actually group level and kind of down in the detail. Yeah. That's, again, a real benefit of Anaplan and data.
Yeah, absolutely. And within the scalability and the benefits it has there, I think as you've highlighted, the ability of Anaplan to provide a solution to stakeholders across all levels of the business, from the most granular operationally to the highest level in terms of strategic senior management, I think that's a really key feature of Anaplan. And especially in that you can do so simply through the structures that you've built. So we define those structures in their lists. We're inputting data from its lowest level of granularity, as you said now in relation to Bolton, and through the functionality that we've built in, that robust modeling, we're seeing the impact roll all the way up to the highest level and how that impacts the targets that you've put in. So, a really powerful use of the tool there for sure.
Absolutely.
Scalability. What value add has the Gym Group seen in relation to scalability from Anaplan?
I think, as I mentioned, it's been pretty incredible, the growth we've had in the last couple of years. I mean, when we first met, when we were building Anaplan, we had 80 gyms. Yeah. Like I say, we're now on 160. Wow. There's no sign of that slowing down. Yeah. We plan to open kind of in a ballpark of 15 to 20 this year. Yeah. And actually, we have chosen a tool that's kind of fit for the future. And actually, that's one of the main benefits of Anaplan. Again, the other thing I mentioned is we've done a couple of kind of opportunistic acquisitions in kind of lifestyle and easy gym. We've also, as I said, enhanced our product. As all those changes happen, and I'm sure more will come down, I don't know what kind of is in store, but I'm sure more change will come. And as it does, Anaplan allows us to kind of easily roll them into the impact of the group. Yeah. What happens when you're kind of working in a fast-paced business that has a lot of change is quite often people want to look at what's happened to the forecast with and without the change. Yeah. So I use the example of Easy Gym as easiest in that because it's the most recent. But people will say, oh, what's the reforecast for the year? But because in their head, they always knew what the number, they wanted the number to be prior to Easy Gym, they'll go, oh, what was the number pre or excluding Easy Gym? Exactly. Anaplan, we built a toggle. So we had a toggle on and off for Easy Gym. We had it seamlessly transitioning in because what you find is in that transition period when there's been change, people want to do the before and after. Absolutely. Anything that happens, I think about one of the key accounting changes this year will be is IFRS 16 that impacts us on leases. Now, for at least a year and a half, if not 2 years, businesses will be going, what's the impact pre-IFRS 16 and post-IFRS 16? Absolutely. And actually, it's that sort of thing on the reforecast that Anaplan allows you to do, is be flexible.
It does indeed. And that scenario analysis, or sandboxing as it's sometimes called, is again another really powerful feature that Anaplan has. Not just as a kind of off-the-shelf functionality, but being able to actually build bespoke scenarios based on what it is that you experience in your environment, in your business, and being able to toggle between those, as you said, in terms of seeing the impact with or without them, or seeing the impact with them but in a slightly different way. Yeah. I mean, that's huge, and something that simply wouldn't be possible in the Excel world that you were in beforehand.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So future plans. What's next for the Gym Group's use of Anaplan? The one thing that we can guarantee is that the Gym Group is not going to be standing still. I think we could say that the only thing that is going to be constant is probably the rate of change, if Absolutely. Not increasing. So you're definitely in a good place for that with Anaplan. Having recently migrated Anaplan with Workday as an enterprise resource planning tool and Microsoft Power BI as a business intelligence solution, are there any future migrations in the pipeline for Anaplan?
I don't think so, because ultimately both of those integrations have been post us implementing Anaplan.
Absolutely, it was their first, wasn't it?
Anaplan was their first in both scenarios. And actually, both of those, as with Anaplan, are fit for the future. So I'm pretty happy with the way they integrate.
Yeah.
But I guess the next step would be automating.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the moment, for both of those scenarios, they require someone doing an import. Now that import's pretty well structured, it's pretty well set up, it's pretty well defined, and there is a report that spits out a Workday in the format that we need it to, and there's reports that spit out of BI that go in and vice versa from Anaplan. So actually, the way it works, pretty seamless, but it still requires someone to do something.
Indeed.
Doesn't take them too long, but actually, in a world where automating has got to be the way you go,
definitely. The world of tech, we want everything faster, right? We want it to be faster, we want it to be cleaner. And I agree that automation is definitely next.
It comes back to, if you're spending any time doing, you'd rather be spending time doing value add.
100%. And that's a very realistic and exciting next step for us, utilizing the API, Anaplan Connect, so that we can start to automate that seamless migration of data from our ERP system in Workday and of course the BI tool in Microsoft Power BI. So really exciting next steps, and who knows, we may well have a webinar after that to talk about how well that's gone as well. How can Anaplan be expanded within the GIM group? Are there other sections of the business or other users that could benefit from the models that you've built so far?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's two things here. Now, both of them stem from the fact that at the moment, the users of Anaplan are within the finance team. Right. So it's myself, it's members of the FBNA team, and really it's people that know how to use the tool. Now, they may use it in conjunction with the people in the business. Yeah. So, for example, you might sit down with a regional manager in the north and go through their gyms and go through their revenue forecast.
Yeah.
But for me, the goal has got to be to use the power of Anaplan and take out kind of the finance team's need to be the ones to use Anaplan in a way.
Right.
We still would like to use it at the center. So when you're collating everything, when you're reviewing everything.
Yeah.
But I'd like to go, this region, here's your target, and let the regional manager play around with Anaplan and their inputs.
Absolutely.
To actually submit their budgets and therefore submit the numbers that hit their group target in a way.
Definitely.
And actually, the person in finance would then spend the time, as I say, doing the value add analysis, not spending the time doing the inputting, spending the time using the tool. It would be spending the time using the tool in the right way.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then the second one for me is business partnering. I almost feel like we're in a different phase of growth now, in a way where, like I said, we've quickly gone from 80 to 160. It feels like no time at all.
Yeah.
And now really it's about growing up as a business, and actually business partnering is something that needs to happen now. So, we're pretty good at speaking to everyone in the business. We're pretty good at spending time with them. But actually what needs to happen is my technology accountant needs to spend time with the technology team. My property accountant needs to spend time with the property team. Yeah. But ultimately, Anaplan can help with that because, again, I'd like the property team to submit their budget into Anaplan.
Yeah.
I'd like the technology team to submit their budget into Anaplan. And you can quite quickly see how the tool can save people time so that we spend the time doing the right analysis.
Yeah, definitely.
And the stuff that really helps move the business forward.
Yeah, indeed. And that makes sense. And it also gives that ownership and accountability to the relevant departments and functions within the business to say that you now own this piece, this is yours, and you can now access the system, import your data or upload your data, and actually see it in the views that are relevant to you. So as something that you've touched on already, within Anaplan, we can have a number of, from one build, we could have a number of specific reports for specific users. Yeah. So they would look at a specific cut of that information. And of course, you would be able to see the cut that they see, but also how that impacts the bigger picture and so on. So I think through the automation that we're speaking about, it would be brilliant because it would be giving them an even faster access to that information.
And you think about how kind of ERP systems have developed in that now it isn't just the accountants using it, HR use it for the HR side. The way invoice flow through an ERP system, you've got the relevant department would approve the invoice and therefore it would go straight into the accounts and you'd know what kind of nominal code to put it to.
Yeah.
In the same way that an ERP system or a good new ERP system would touch across everyone in the business. That's what you want from your EPM tool and Anaplan. And actually, at the moment, I'd say that we're very much using it within the finance function, but the next step has to be in a grown-up business to roll it out and not just have Anaplan be the myth within the finance team, this fantastic tool that we're using, showing people the power of it. Absolutely. Make everyone else's lives easier.
This is it. Wow, fantastic. Exciting plans on the horizon for sure. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Matt, for your time today. It's been a pleasure working with you and the Gym Group on these projects that we've been on, and also seeing the huge growth and success of the business and the key parts that Anaplan has played in managing the FBNA function.
No worries at all. Thank you for having me.
I'll shortly present a quick demo of Anaplan for anyone joining us today that is new to the platform. And I'll begin with this slide here, which shows some of the key elements in Anaplan. As we start here on the App Hub, what you'll see is that the App Hub is an area in which you can access pre-built models, and they, of course, are available for customer use. You mentioned earlier, Matt, about IFRS 16. While, of course, we can build custom solutions in relation to such regulations, of course, on the other side, there may well be a pre-built IFRS 16 app that we could then look to implement. And this would be the kind of requirement that someone may go to the App Hub for in terms of finding a solution from there. My personal preferred approach is one to customize to that which customers want, simply because then it's bespoke to you. You own every single piece of it, and we can tailor the model that we build to match the environment and systems and processes that you currently have. Secondly, we have the workspace. So this is the ring-fenced area for your models. It's effectively the section of the cloud that you own, and you fully control it. You control who has access to it, including the partners that you work with, and even Anaplan. You choose who can go in and who can't, and it's very much your space. And the size of that space is very much what you'll be purchasing, if you like, and that will likely affect the amount of cost incurred when you have that agreement in place with Anaplan. Thirdly, we look at the models. Now, the models are the full business use case. So in the case of the Gym Group, we were looking at models such as the FBNA model. We were looking at models such as the membership database model. These are use cases, or if you like, high-level requirements from the system. And we build those into those separate models so that we can be clear in the functionality of that model and the service that it provides to your business. Fourth, we have lists. Now, lists are effectively the spine, if you like, of dimensionality in Anaplan. These are the dimensions, the hierarchies, inbuilt lists such as versions and time. And in the demo that we'll go into shortly, I'll show you exactly how they work and how they're referenced in Anaplan. So within any module, we would apply that module to a list or a number of lists, and that's effectively where we get the multi-dimensionality from. Line items. Now, this is the home of the data and calculation rules. So a line item in a module will apply to whatever number of lists and whichever specific lists you would want it to apply to. And this is really where the scalability comes in. So the piece of functionality or calculation that you have chosen to input into the line item will now apply to a list of, let's say, regions. And as you add to the list of regions, each of those regions will then be applied to the functionality of that line item, which is where the scalability comes in. If you were to change the hierarchy of that list of regions, it still applies to that line item in the same way, which is why you can then add the regions as your business grows without having to change the logic in the functionality of the line item, unless, of course, you wanted to. Modules, as I briefly touched on, this is the multi-dimensional home for the data. You could almost think of them as big pivot tables. We're basically taking a series of lists and they're being applied to the modules. Of course, you could have a module with no list applied. It doesn't need to have any dimensionality. That choice is yours. But the modules are largely where the multi-dimensional element of the system takes place. And finally, we have dashboards. This is the front end of Anaplan. This is the user interface into the model. And as we'll see in the demo in a moment, you will have dashboards that are specific to the requirements of the end user. And those dashboards will be accessible by the users that you choose to have access to those specific dashboards. And we'll come to that in just a moment as we switch on to the demo. Okay. Okay, so here we are in an Anaplan model. This is a demo model, an FBNA demo, and it's built for that purpose. That it is purely for a demo and not for it's not a client's model or anything like that. One key thing to point out here, of course, we've landed on a dashboard, so we can see here instantly the user interface into the system, into the various modules beneath. And we'll go through these in the navigations so that you can have a quick orientation around a model, what it looks like, what it does, how it's made. And I'll also give you a little peek at the back end as well in terms of the blueprints of the modules, as we call them, so that you can see the way that the formulas are structured. The key thing on formulas, of course, is that there's no programming or coding here. Everything that you see is actually going to be in English. There'll be commands that you understand. And it's also, in many ways, very similar to Excel. So before going on, just to note, there is a lot here. Of course, we have our content section with each of our functional areas, our groupings of the dashboards. And within each of those functional areas, we, of course, have the dashboards into which we will go and look at those in slightly more detail. We have our visuals in terms of our conditional formatting to show variance analysis, our quarter-on-quarter percentage differences. We also have our charts, of course, down here so that we can see the impact in terms of how that moves. This model has been built from scratch. So it's not an off-the-shelf solution. This model isn't out of the app hub. This has been built from scratch. So at the beginning, there were no lists, there were no modules, there were no dashboards. If you imagine this model were yours, that means that from day one, we would be working with you to understand your structures, your lists, your hierarchies, your data, your inputs, your outputs, the calculations that you use, and everything that you have within this model will be familiar to you. The dashboards will reflect your reports, or at least the reports that you want to have. So it may well be new reports that you don't currently have, but everything that you see will be yours. So that which you see here is an example of the way that it can look, but it's by no means the way that it has to look. So of course, do just keep that in mind. Today is a quick fly through. It will be very much from a high level. If of course you do want to see anything in any more detail, do get in touch with us and we can arrange for that to happen on a more one-to-one basis. And of course, if you're interested in a proof of concept, then of course give us a shout and we'll be able to put that in place as well. In which case you can of course see a model like this, but it would be a model that was now very much specific to you and what you would want to see within that model. So a quick orientation. Here we have an executive scorecard dashboard. This little home symbol that we can see up here shows us that it's the landing dashboard, which we already know because of course it's the dashboard that opened when we came in. In the content section, as I was saying, we have a series of dashboards so that we can choose which dashboard we would want to go to at any time. Over here, we have some navigation processes. Each of these processes is taking us to a different dashboard so that we can see a different cut of information or a different report, if you like. If I hover over it, it gives me an idea as to where it goes. So it's telling me that it will open the dashboard of customer revenue analytics. Similarly for revenue planning, OPEX planning, and of course, OPEX targets. We've spoken about lists and how lists, of course, are the dimensionality, the backbone, if you like, of the dimensions. And up here, we can see that this module that we are looking at is showing us that it's referencing these three lists. The first here is versions. By clicking on this drop-down, I can see all of the versions to which this module relates. Versions, as we said earlier on, are an inbuilt list in the system. So we can customize the content in terms of which versions we have. And Anaplan has a whole plethora of functionality around the use of versions as an inbuilt list, whether it be comparison, whether it be control, whether it be switch over in terms of when you would apply a forecast to actuals or the actualization of a forecast. All of that would happen within versions. And here we can see that we have actual budget and forecast with a what if and a variance as well. And we would just quite simply flick through these, clicking through each one so that it would show us how the data would move in relation to the selection of version that we have. The other lists that we have up here are ones that are not inbuilt. We have created these lists. And the one that we're looking at here is obviously the corporate structure. So we can see by expanding the parent entity that we have our breakdown into regions of UK, EMEA, APAC, and corporate. Within UK, it breaks out into England, Wales, and Scotland. And of course, within each of these, we can see that it breaks down into its relevant children or its composite parts, as it were. If we are to choose any one of these items, let's, for example, take London South. In choosing London South, we see that everything related to that would also change. So in London South, where we have maybe slightly less data, let's take London as a rolled up level. So in doing so, we would choose London, everything in here would change, and we would then see all of our data in relation to that specific selection. And in clicking on each of these, we will see that they also will update the modules that are linked into this one. So the key thing that I'm trying to show here is a synchronized view or selection within dashboards. That which we select up here will then change that which is visible below. And within each of these hierarchies that we're looking at, if we take products, for example, we can also assign selective access so that we have one module with one list, but within that module, within that list, we can determine which users have access to those lists. So we could say, if there are 5 products, for example, and there are only 2 users, we may say that one of those users will access 3 items or 3 products from that list, and the other 2 will, of course, and the other one will access the other 2. That's something that we can do through selective access. So one build, but multiple uses rather, of that build. We can click through then to the various dashboards to show you how some of those may look, in that we have a wholesale revenue dashboard here. Flicking back, we can go through to our OPEX planning. And in here, we can see that we have a series of dashboards, a series of modules that are relating to or showing us the data beneath. Within these, we have an incomplete status. So this is telling us that even though a user has tried to submit, it's incomplete. And in terms of it being incomplete, we can go through to see why that would be. And we could click into the various sections to see why it is that something is showing as incomplete. So if you imagine here, we may be looking at a budget submission. And it may well be that you're the finance manager and your teams are submitting your budgets. In the submission of those budgets, someone has tried to do so, but not completed all of the information that you require for you to deem that submission as complete. As a result, it marks as incomplete and their submission is effectively not completed. This management of workflow is something that is key, of course, especially within a budget submission process, and something that can add a lot of value in terms of making sure that when senior management are viewing submissions, they're viewing complete submissions and not partially complete submissions. So if we were to click through, for example, to general and admin, we can see that by clicking on this specific item here, on this list item, we see that everything else will synchronize. So now when we're looking at this chart down here in terms of variance summary, showing us a nice waterfall chart, we can see that it's in relation to general and admin. It's looking at England direct sales, and we can see that that's synchronized as well. And it's also doing the same on this bar chart down here. Clicking on general and admin, if I then hit OPEX plan, you'll see that it opens a general and admin planning dashboard so that I can now go into more detail in terms of understanding what makes up the numbers in general and administration. If, however, I were to click on, let's say, salaries and benefits, everything else synchronizes. And when I hit that same button, it will now open workforce planning. A small show of the kind of functionality that Anaplan has in terms of one button having multiple destinations based on the selection within the list. If we were to take, for example, this general and admin, within here we'd be able to choose our various items in terms of making selection or decision on how we wanted to move. So here we can see that our time is set to years as opposed to months or weeks or days, all of which of course would be, or quarters, all of which would be an option. And here we can choose those versions again in terms of what we do with it. We can see the level that we're looking at here in terms of England direct sales, and we of course can choose between those. And then in terms of input, we can also make our selections as well as we move down through the relevant stages in terms of amending the data that we have, inputting any notes, and of course, a submission that would then, if all criteria has been met, of course, will change the status so that it would no longer say in progress, but it would say complete. Finally, let me just quickly jump into the back end. So to show you exactly what it is that I've done there. So looking here at this module exists on the dashboard, which of course is the executive scorecard. And I'm going through to open the source module, which of course is here. Now, just in case, for those of you who are thinking, can anyone access the backend in terms of the source module? The answer is no. You can choose who accesses it. You can also choose how they access it, whether it be read, whether it be write, what they see, their functionality, the lists that they see applied to that module, and so on and so forth. But this is how it would look in the backend. And this is the backend to the dashboard, but in the backend of the module, we can then go into what we call the blueprint, which is this space here. And from this view, we can now see the way that the module has been built. We can see our line items down here. This is that functionality home that we were talking about, where we would input our formulas. And we can see that this formula here that's taking the year value of the unit sales price within the price book module, we can see that it's applied to the profit centers L4 list and the server subset list. Here, we're simply taking units sold as a line item. So that's anything that we have in here, and it's being multiplied by the price, which we have down here. So as you can see, it's all in English. We can trace this through quite easily to see what it's doing. The difference is that when we input this here in terms of units sold multiplied by price, what it's really doing is it's doing that for every single item that we have within this list in relation to all lists that we have applied to this module. And that's where you start to get that scalability power, because as we add or change items within these lists, the functionality can ultimately stay the same. If we wanted to use a formula, or we wanted to do something and we didn't quite know how to do it, there's a resource within Anaplan called Anapedia. And we go to that by clicking on this item up here, and we can jump into that from here. Within Anapedia, we have many areas that we can go. And in this case, we'll go to the calculation functions because, of course, we're looking for a function. We'll go into all functions, and we can see all of the functions that are available, alphabetized for nice, easy access. And we can see all of those in here. So just now we were looking for year value, for example. We would see year value here. Alternatively, of course, we could have just searched on year value from here. And that, of course, would get there in the same way. And we would click through and be able to look at exactly what that does. So it's telling us that it returns the year value of the source line item or property according to the time summary method set for the source. It then goes in to tell us the syntax, year value, and then we'd put our bit in here that we wanted to reference, and it tells us that that piece that we're referencing will be the source line item or property to be summarized. We can see the format of the input, the format of the output, and also the way that the argument will be structured. It tells us a few of the constraints, and it even gives us an Excel equivalent. Now, in this case, there isn't an Excel equivalent because, of course, Excel doesn't have a year value functionality. But in situations where there are equivalents, you could actually input the Excel formula, in many cases, directly into Anaplan, and Anaplan will convert that into the Anaplan version of that formula. So it's kind of tried to understand or account for the fact that you will be most familiar with Excel in the first instance, but it won't take you too long to migrate to Anaplan and to be thinking in the way that Anaplan works. So, conscious of time, of course, a very quick snapshot, if you like, of the demo. I guess finally, just to quickly show you one other piece in terms of scalability. If we were to jump into regions, for example, and we see here, or even let's jump down to departments, we have this breakdown. It may well be that items will move in the hierarchy. Hierarchies change all the time. And in terms of that movement, in Anaplan, we would take it and we would simply drop it into another place. Now, I wanted to show how simple that is, but what I also want to show is how great the impact of that is. So I've simply gone into my lists and I've moved an item from one hierarchy into another. Okay, so England now also has Wales. If we jump back into our executive scorecard and we were to drop down into the relevant place, we would now see, get to the right place. Bear with me. Good. We would now see that for our England, for our Wales rolling up into England, as in Wales sales, we would see that from here. So let's get back to where we were looking here. So in here, we would see that if we were to look at England on the drop down, Wales sales now rolls up into England instead of rolling up into Wales. And all of the children that roll up into Wales sales also roll up, therefore, into England. So we've now changed the totals for England, the targets for England, and all of the impacts up the chain or downstream in relation to that one change of moving an item from one parent into another. This is a key example of scalability because in this case, of course, it's just dragging and dropping one. What if we were adding an entire new region or an entire new department with an entirely different hierarchy of children? This is the kind of change that you'd be able to make and see the impact without needing to go into the back end and making structural changes, or even worse, being in the Excel world where you're going to see a series of references. References don't exist in that way in Anaplan. It will simply block you before you could do something that would break it. So that robustness means that you have to work within a consistent way in terms of the structure of data and data flow. So I'm going to wrap it up there. And as I say, for a more detailed demo, to go into it in more depth, feel free to get in touch, either for a demo on this model, or even better, of course, a proof of concept that is specific to yourselves. I'm going to have a quick look here and see if I can access the chat section, see if there are any questions that have been posted. So just looking to see. If there are any questions. I'm not seeing anything here. Okay, I think we'll call it there for time. So thank you all very much for joining today. Hope you've enjoyed the demo. Thank you again to Matt for your time today, and also, of course, for the fantastic work that you've done at the Gym Group on this implementation of Anaplan. And I look forward to hearing from all of you, or from some of you, in relation to working with you in the future. So thank you very much.